Welcome, Sibs. This is Little Sister Chris. Yes, Little Sister Chris, and I am welcoming you to the new season of the podcast. Yes, a new season starting right here, June 2023. It's been a long time coming since I've celebrated a new season with new content and new siblings. So I'm glad that you're here. I know it is bittersweet for you to be joining this community with us, but I'm glad that you are deciding to join and listen in. Don't forget to share, subscribe, and shake up the algorithm. The best thing about being on this right here podcast is that you get to join in with me and you get to join and hear other stories and similar stories, and you can give me feedback on this channel as well as online. www.survivingsiblinglostfmpodcast.org. And I am a therapist, so I have dual roles. Thank you guys for being here again, and welcome to the new season. I have a good fellow Sib here who is sharing her story about the loss of her brother. So stick and stay, and welcome Mara Shore. All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I'm excited, and can you tell I'm excited because I have my glasses on and I am fogging up already. But anywho, this is Little Sister Chris, and I have a fellow surviving Sib with me that we have been chasing each other for a minute on Facebook, and we finally got to meet up so we can have a conversation for the podcast today. So
yes, I'm so excited that we're finally able to do this together.
Oh my gosh, and just let me tell you, I missed her. I've been in Florida before a couple of times and did not realize that she was in Florida. And she told me, she was like, hey, you want to meet up? And for some reason, I missed her.
So next time,
I know that when I go on tour somewhere, that I'm going to hit her up, and I won't get next time. I promise. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, Sib.
Yes. My name is Mara Shore, and through the joy, we use that term loosely, that has transpired, that is our world, our shared world. I am somehow simultaneously an older sister, a younger sister, a middle child, and an only child, all wrapped up into one. Thanks to how everything has transpired. But it would be nothing if I was not an older sister first. So with my baby brother.
Baby brother. All right.
My baby brother, Jordan, who, at 6'2", we joked, always my baby brother. So just doesn't matter.
Yeah. How many years in between the two of you?
3.
Oh, okay. Same.
3. So
3.
Okay. Yes. And that's the funny thing that you don't quite realize after your sibling has passed, is that you keep getting older and their age stops. So as I turned 40, and his age had stopped at 32. And so it's so strange that way that time keeps going, and for the sibling that's still here, and our time just keeps going. So it's like you have to stop and think about it, because you're so used to, for so long, that age always being 3 years apart, right? That's supposed to be a constant.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you put that into words, because I never really put that into words with my brother. I just know now that I'm older than he ever was.
Yeah. And I was always the older sister. But now it's much older than I used to be. So, but yes, 3 years apart.
Definitely. So how long have you been on this journey?
So technically, so my brother passed away February 3rd of 2019. And so we just hit the 4-year mark. My brother had a long battle with addiction. And I say that it's odd when you love somebody that is so deep in their addiction, because you almost start a grieving process while they're still alive. And so it's a, you're grieving the person that they were, you're grieving the world and relationship that you had together. You almost grieve them before they pass, because you know that they're not going to necessarily live the long, healthy life that you and I hopefully are very much in store for. And and then you grieve them once they are no longer physically here. So it's been quite the journey over the past decade and a half to 2 decades now. But he passed away February 3rd of 2019.
Yeah. And that is very hard to talk about anticipatory grief, especially if somebody is, you're watching them and you're hoping for the best, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to expect the best, and it's not
Yeah.
occurring.
And it's a very odd simultaneous way to handle it, because you are hoping for the best, you have to expect the worst. And so you're like, this, are you an optimist, are you a pessimist, are you a realistic? You have to kind of be all of it at the same time. We were, I use the words very fortunate loosely. In an ideal world, my brother would still be happy and healthy and self-supporting and functioning and still here today and clean and sober. That isn't what happened, but we were fortunate that at the very end of his life, he did, fortunate or unfortunate, spend about a month in the hospital. And during that month, so it was not just an instant overdose, right? So there was not that, but it was just 15 years of hard drug use that ultimately led to things shutting down in his body one by one. And so, but during that month, we had the opportunity to spend time together and be at the hospital almost every day. And there was a lot of forgiveness that happened in both ways, on both sides. And, we were able to spend that time together in that period of time. So, and get to know each other as adults a little bit more and talk about stories a little bit more. And, I don't know if you've felt this way too, but one thing is just, as my mom and I were in the waiting room a lot together, and, my parents were divorced. And therefore, when we were little, my brother and I would be the ones that would kind of shuffle back and forth together. And so, there were a lot of stories about my brother, of things that had happened just because my mom was not present, that I was kind of the keeper of those stories. And so it's like you start to feel like you're the keeper of those stories when there are things that you're like, I'm the only one that knows this now.
Yeah.
And so sharing a lot of that too.
Yeah, we are the historians.
We are.
Yeah.
We are. So yeah. So
Okay. So big sister duties. Do you remember the day that you met your brother?
we were only 3 years apart, so I don't remember the day
Yeah.
that I met him. Um, but I will be brutally honest, we drove each other bananas as kids. We were constantly, mom. Oh, we drove each other bananas. We wrestled. He was very into wrestling. And so we like wrestled all the time, to the degree that we were like wrestling. And I think at one point I was like wrestling / goofing around in the basement, rolled onto the couch, rolled back off the couch, broke a collarbone. We
Yeah.
were just, but we were always, it was a love fight. I wouldn't say a love hate. It was a love fight.
Yeah.
And, he would, especially as he got older and he got bigger and taller. And my mom's like, you're not always going to be taller than him. I'm like, of course I am. I'm the older sibling. She's like,
Yeah.
that's not how it works genetically, and, he used to think it was hilarious to like toss me over his shoulder and run through the house with me. Cause again, he was, 6 feet plus. And so when he was strong and healthy, he was able to do that. And I would have to like duck my head so that I wouldn't hit my head on door frames and things like that. Um, but yeah, we had some hilarious times. We fought like cats and dogs, and yeah, it's all sorts of stuff. But at 3, I don't remember the day that I first met him, but he was, again, going back and forth between 2 sets of parents' house when we were little. We were always kind of that duo.
The duo. I like that. Very rough.
Yeah.
Boys being siblings. I was very rough. My brother was rough with me too. We broke my
Yes.
finger
Yes.
messing with him. So you say
It happens.
my finger was broken.
It happens. It's hilarious. My cousin has four sons. And for probably the first like 10, 12 years of their lives, after they were like the oldest was a couple years old, somebody was in the ER like every quarter. And to a certain point, they're like, is something going? She's like, they are constantly wrestling and jumping off stairs. And that's how boys are. She's and she's a surviving sibling as well. So that's something that has always made her
Wow.
and I very close. Yeah. So it's I used to go in and visit and say to her, and say to the boys, no ER trips while I'm here. Like that's my only request. I don't care what we do, but we're not going to the ER. So
Yeah. Yeah, not doing that right
yeah.
now. Oh,
No.
yeah, that the commonality of all of that sibling
Mm-hmm.
bond, love and fighting, and sometimes you do feel
Yes.
like you hate them, because you just that's that first friend, first companion in the home, and they sometimes try to
Yep.
play.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's interesting. So because of my brother's addiction, after he passed, I knew that I wanted to continue to help in some way. I just didn't know what that would look like. And I knew that I was not strong enough to directly do any work one-on-one with people suffering that are actively in their addiction. And through a series of events, I became very involved in the Guardian Ad Litem program, foster care here in Orange County. I'm in Orange County, Florida. So, and I was not able to be a guardian ad litem. I'm not a lawyer here in Orange County. We're one of the few places that you actually do have to be a lawyer to be a GAL, of
Okay.
which I am not, but we can volunteer within the program. So I became an advocate. And the first amazing little girl I became an advocate for, turned out her cousins were also in foster care. And so one of those girls has come to live with us. So I, am a foster parent now.
Oh,
And we often just leave out the word foster at this point. So she's our daughter. But she also, she has an older sister, and the two of them not physically fight, but the two of them just will get into it and they'll bicker and bicker and bicker. And I'm going, I forgot that this is like with what this is like with siblings, it's just what it is.
yeah. Congratulations on being a mom.
Thank you.
Everything.
I Yeah, I joke that, some people there's like a 9-month gestation and then they come out and they get this bright, brand new, shiny baby. And my kid came to me at 17 and a half with tattoos. Like that's just how this,
Yeah.
that's my world. That's our world. So we do this like that here. But and honestly, and the reason I say this all too is that I don't think that ever would have happened had it not been for everything that transpired with my brother. And it's my brother's name is Jordan. Her grandmother's maiden name was Jordan. And we say that there's a lot of different, commonalities along the way of just different things. And it's just, I'm convinced that in some way the world and the universe
Yeah.
sent me my crew.
Yeah.
And I think I never would have done that had it not been for everything that transpired with my brother.
Yeah. Yeah. That is our journey. That is our journey. Like it shaped us in so many ways. The life that we thought we were going to have. Of course, other people the same thing. Life just transitions in different ways, but definitely having a sibling transition in the way that they transition really does
Mm-hmm.
change your trajectory. It changes
It does.
everything.
And you and I we're texting or whether it was text or Facebook message or Facebook comments or whatever form of communication. And it's what's interesting, and you and I have talked about this is that when you then, especially at our age at 40 years old, as our parents are getting older, then there is, because you really do become the one, you become the one that it falls on you, right? To be, and we're not sure how helpful my brother would have been,
Yeah,
right? Like,
not
we don't
sure.
really know. But it falls, my parents just moved, and so that was a lot on my husband and I helping coordinate with things like that. It becomes doctor's appointments, being there for that. I mean, there isn't necessarily somebody that you split that up with. I have an older stepbrother, but he lives out of state. So it really does become
Yeah.
me. And it's amazing what you kind of look at and you go, it's an odd journey, that of how it just affects your world as you get older too.
It does. It does. And I'm glad you brought that up. Because there are times where, well, I would say all the time, when I have to take a parent to the doctor or, they have something going on, and I immediately think about, what if my brother was here? How would he handle this situation? Would I have additional help? And would I feel this much anxiety about it?
And yes, and I know, for my brother, it definitely gave me, when you go through the loss, right? Let alone any of the other losses that you experience in your world with grandparents, or, somebody else that is of a more senior age, we'll say, but somebody that doesn't die so prematurely. And I think I don't know about you, but it worries. Like, I tend to be a hyper worrier about everything. And so it's just, because it's like I've already experienced one set of loss. And so I'll be darned if my parents anything's gonna happen to them any sooner than it
Yeah.
needs to. Right. And we do doctor's appointments. Sometimes I've found, because they both still, they're still able to get to the appointments themselves. So we have a hack now of, sometimes I'm just on the phone when the doctor comes in, because I can't always break away from everything I'm doing in the middle of the day. But I will, be on the phone with the doctor too, and ask all the questions and take all the notes and
Yeah.
all of those things. It does, because it falls on the surviving sibling.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I'm always like, did you eat today? What did you eat? Tell me about that. We need to come up with a plan.
Oh my gosh, my poor mother, mom, if you're listening to this, my poor mother, every, that has sugar in it. Should you be having so much sugar? It causes inflammation.
Yeah.
Really? Do you need to have the cookies? Could you have picked a different Starbucks drink? I mean, I am so like on top of
Yeah.
fast food. It's my poor mom. And she's like, I just wanted a Starbucks today.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh. And my mom would cough, and I'd be like, where'd that cough come
Yeah.
from? How long?
How long has that been?
Yeah.
Yes.
What? Hold on. Hold on.
Yep.
It's just a cough. Okay.
I know.
I'll be
Did you talk to your doctor? Did you let them know?
right.
Are you
Right.
on, right? Exactly.
Yes, that's
Oh my goodness.
exactly how I am. And sometimes I have to
Yes.
say, okay, Crystal,
Yes. Yes.
I go.
And you tend to, and because I'm not somebody that hasn't experienced, sibling loss, I can't speak to what somebody that hasn't experienced it would go through, or what their thought process would be. But it's like I become overprotective then of my mom, and especially, and I say my mom more because she has a lot of underlying just health concerns and health issues, but I become like overprotective of her, to the point that I go, she is still an adult that
Yeah,
still
no.
lives her life, like she still does have the common sense. But I become like, oof, very very overprotective of her, and it's very fear-based, because it's like I can't lose you too.
Yeah,
um
yeah.
so, and then in turn, she and I, then I get my worrying from her. So she and I swoop in on my poor stepdad. And we like,
Yeah,
he's like, I'm fine.
yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. I cannot get if someone might say one of my parents calls me and I miss the phone call, that freaks me out too.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. That it freaks me out, for a long time. Missing even like an unknown caller, unknown name
Yeah.
would freak me out. I felt like I had to answer every call, because just in case.
Yeah.
And I learned the area code for the, or not the area code, but like the second three digits for one of the local hospital systems, because they're so massive. They have their own, 407, 303. And so it was just like my stomach would drop out. Like, what if they're in the hospital? What if? And I think you go to bed at night not knowing if you're going to get that call or a call in the middle of the night. So I think, especially for those of us that have dealt with, our siblings in hospital stays,
Yeah.
right? So not necessarily which I think is very, very different versus for somebody that just passes instantly. And that brings along a whole other set of fears. But when you're so used to getting updates from the hospital and calls from the hospital, it definitely invokes that level of fear that lingers a very long time.
Yeah, most definitely. I
Mm-hmm.
know you've been on this journey for 4 years, and in that 4 years, what can you say is your strength that you never had before?
I will say, and I think it was between my brother and my grandmother too. I was her medical advocate. I was her advocate as well. I think navigating the system of medical care, I mean, I could give all sorts of like other personal, traits and things like that, but I really think that honestly, and being able to navigate the healthcare system much better than I ever had to before because I had never needed to. Um, and honestly, that is what led me to want to advocate for kiddos in foster care, was because I had this skill between my brother and my grandmother that really, I mean, I was my brother's healthcare surrogate, and power of attorney. So it was, making those decisions. I was the one that was speaking with doctors, and not that my mom wasn't, but
Right.
it was always easier to help kind of translate a little bit more. My mom and I would make those decisions together. And so I think when you are so intensely in it for a period of time, you really do learn that skill. And it's a skill that I chose to use for good instead of evil. I mean, I don't think that there's an evil, but
Yeah.
um, I definitely chose to take that skill that I mean, I don't want to say I wish I never learned it, but I wish I didn't have to learn it the way that I had to learn it, and for the reason I had to learn it. But I chose to take that and advocate, and I've since advocated for some absolutely amazing kids.
Awesome. And I actually work for the state of Tennessee, and one of my jobs is foster care. So it's quite amazing that whenever I talk to surviving sibs, that we have some commonalities not only in our journeys, but that we do some works together that is common to each other.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. I think that there's also some of the things that you can't unsee, right? Like the things you can't unsee it once you become more aware. So,
Right.
um, but I think it's also I think people that work on the whether it's in foster care or people that work in like the surrounding services, it's reminds me a lot of people that it's the same thing with hospice, right? Where there's very like similar stories to people that are like hospice nurses. They don't go into it because they want to make people better. That's just not the duty of a hospice nurse. And they all have very similar, like beautiful stories about why they chose to do that particular field of medicine. And I think that people that work within foster care on any level tend to be the same way. Like there's always a very specific reason.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And so tell me a little bit about you, because I know with foster being a foster mom and also things that relieve pressure and stress. I've seen a lot about animals on your Facebook page.
Yes. Yes. So I grew up with animals, right? And I grew up, we always had like a million animals. And I joke with my mom now about how she has, 4 dogs and a cat. And she had, up until recently, she had fish and I was like, why are you like this? And then I go, oh, look at who I was. Like, she was the same. She's always been like this. So, I mean, we've always had a million animals. And so I've always had, gosh, it's been 15 plus years that I've had dogs of my own. And during the pandemic, I mean, I'm in Florida, so we weren't quite as shut down as the rest of the world for quite as
Yeah.
long, but my husband and I tended to like hunker down a lot longer than the rest of the Floridians. And so honestly, I needed a hobby that was not on Zoom. Like I could not take, and that's when everybody was like, oh, you want to see friends? Get on Zoom. You have a doctor's appointment? Get on Zoom. You have a work call? Get on Zoom. You want to see your mom? Get on Zoom. And I was like, I can't sit and no, but we also weren't really leaving the house. So we, we'd already rescued and adopted Vinny. So Vincenzo Moish Shore Similo is our 3-year-old bully mix. So we adopted him as a puppy, and decided to foster dogs. And so, through one dog at a time, we've fostered more than 30 dogs here in our house over the past 2.5 years. And it's something that brings me so much joy. And, because you're helping the dog, you're helping, you're helping the families that are involved on both ends. And it just makes such a huge difference. So, and as my husband put it, if we were going to have to be in lockdown, isn't it better with a puppy than without a puppy? So, and our teenager loves it. She's gotten involved with the rescue community now too. She's picked up dog sitting, and as her, her job, she makes cupcakes for dogs. So, you know, so yeah, we live in a funny little world. But we always grew up with animals. My brother and I both always loved dogs. We really, really did. So it was just kind of a thing that was bound to happen eventually. My mom fostered German Shepherds when I was younger. So for me, like the rescue world was something I was already familiar with, and it's been a great community building too.
Oh, good, good. I knew
And
that.
it makes my heart so happy.
And that was so awesome to do that right at, because so much stuff happening between 2019 and then boom, 2020 comes and you're in COVID, everybody's in COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And it was really, and I think at that point, so my brother had passed away the year before. My grandmother had passed away in 2020, like days before COVID really hit. She passed away February 29th, and the world shut down like March 15th. So, or 16th, or whatever day that was. And so I was left alone with all my big feelings. And it was like all the grief, even from losing my brother, was just like you're just left to sit with it. And I think you can really relate to this too, is that I think people from the outside that have never really experienced deep grief yet, because it'll happen to all of us eventually, see grief as being very linear, right? So somebody passes, and you, as time goes on, you should, I use this in quotes, like you should get better. It should be less. It should. And I don't think it's necessarily more or less. I think it's just, it morphs into something totally different over time. How it feels different. And it becomes, sure, it's more like a scar than a fresh open wound, but some days it still feels like a wound. And so I was left processing all those big feelings. So I've realized I'm just someone that likes to take care of others. I've never biologically wanted my own kiddos. That's just never been anything that I want. But you know, between the teenager life and the foster dog life, that's filled the caretaker role.
Oh, excellent, excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
So glad that you followed your heart in that regard, because a lot of times people do not choose teenagers as their babies, but we need more people to choose teens as their babies, and you
And
did.
I will say that we also, we it comes with all the ups. It comes with the ooh, I forgot how scary I was as a teenager even, right? My husband is amazing, but we joke that sometimes our house has become like an estrogen tunnel, especially like when her sister is here. There's just a lot of estrogen all at once in the house, and he's like, he grew up with 3 brothers, so he's just like, I don't get this. But I will say too that helping that next generation, and we are not looking to be, forever foster parents. So we're not looking to have, how many different kiddos can we have? We have in Florida, there's different types of foster care licenses you can have. So we have what's known as a level 1 license, meaning we're really only licensed for her. right? We're only licensed for Hayden, and she turned 18. So technically she's, she's quote unquote aged out, but we say she's allowed to be here until she's 30. She said, well, you used to say 35. And I said, did you plan on living at home till you were 35? Like, did you not think 30 was enough time? Became our joke. But yeah, she's just like anyone else, with their kiddos, like she doesn't have to leave at 18, but she's 18 now.
Yeah.
So, but I do think that that's something I never would have done if my brother was still here. I just think that life would have taken me a completely different road. And I like to think that he has something to do with that.
Thank you. Thank you, brother. I know it's bittersweet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
He is. He's, and I think, I was listening to the episode of your podcast where you were talking about hanging up like wall art and the importance of specific photos that you choose, and the memories, and you really went into detail about like the day that the photo was taken, and you remember like everything surrounding the photo. And it's just, I think it is so important to continue to talk about your siblings and continue to remember them in the ways that honor them as well. And I mean, while honoring the relationship, but honoring those good moments as well, because I know that not everybody that's lost a sibling has the best memories all the time, from those relationships. I think those of us that their siblings struggled with addiction, it's very, very different. And it's much more complicated. But I will say that it's looking and honoring the good moments and the person that they were has been so important. And I keep photos, favorited on my phone of the photos that make my heart happy too.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
But
And your heart happy.
it's about, yeah. And it's, knowing what that looks like, and it's different for everybody. And it's different for everybody. And, I think that and something I just thought of is that, if somebody that's listening to this for, and you are a new surviving sibling, because there's something I think that as surviving siblings, like we develop scripts for certain things, right? So on how to answer things, right? I remember the first time somebody asked me the simple question, which is like this basic get to know you question of, oh, so do you have any other siblings? And it was somebody that was well-meaning. It was a friend's new girlfriend. The four of us were out to eat, and she asked, and I looked at my friend and froze, and I looked at my husband, and I just it was 3 weeks after my brother passed, and it was just the like and I gripped his knee under the table, and I just was like, how do I answer this?
Yeah.
And he had to answer it for me. And I think that over time you develop a script that's comfortable for you, right? So that you're not undersharing, you're not lying, you're not oversharing. You learn, and you're going to bumble through it in the beginning, right? You're going to make it awkward for other people. They're going to make it awkward for you. It's going to be, you may go into the bathroom and cry for a moment afterwards. But I think it's all part of the process too. I mean, do you find, Chris, that there's like certain scripts that you've developed about how to, yeah, right?
Yeah. And in one of the episodes, I talked about my therapist telling me about she told me that I didn't have an emotional connection to my story. And she was totally right when she asked me, tell me the whole story about from the time you knew your brother was diagnosed with cancer to the time he died, and then afterwards. So I just go through this whole narrative as if it was not even my life. And then she stopped me. She's like, you didn't cry. You didn't nothing when you told that story. It was like you were reading a book. And I was like, well,
I've been telling this story for 20 some years now.
yeah. And it's like I tell a story because I'm a therapist on my day job, and then I'm a podcaster. And then when I started writing the book, that was different. It started becoming very different. So yes, there was a script in my head for different questions that new people will ask and all of that. So I could just go ahead and say it off the cuff and we move on.
And and I like to keep them short and sweet,
Yeah.
and they just don't, and I remember too, different family members had different opinions on either how much information to give,
Mm-hmm.
um, and who to give what information to. And because people are always going to have an opinion, right? And I think if it's cancer, well, why didn't they try more therapies? Why did they do too many therapies? Why did they choose to do this form of hospice? Why did you do, I mean, like everybody has, because we've lost family members with cancer, and everybody has big opinions, right? And then I think, for me, when you have somebody that you lose due to drug use, there's so much stigma around it, even for the people that weren't the ones that were using, right? So, it became, some family members gave one version that was not an untrue version, of, well, heart failure. Well, so his heart just gave out at 32.
Yeah.
Now he did have to have valves replaced in his heart, not valves plural, but he had to have a valve replaced in his heart. Um, and his heart in the end did give out, but it didn't just randomly give out one day. But there were different, and I think we all had to feel those feelings, right? And respect why people wanted to give more information or less. My mom's an oversharer. I love my mother. She knows this. She gave like play every day he was in the hospital. And I'm like, I wasn't ready to tell people that
Mm-hmm.
when he was in the hospital yet. And she was going, and I'm going. And then I was like, Mom, I just wasn't ready to start fielding calls yet.
Yeah.
And, she and I, dealt with that together as well. And so I think there's like, no matter if you're an overshare or an undershare or you're middle of the road,
Yeah.
navigating that with family, whether it's that they're sick or even after your sibling has passed. And, I have a friend that says everyone's allowed to feel their feelings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she uses that phrase with her kiddo. Since he was a baby, she's used that phrase with Evan. And I told her, I'm like, that phrase got me through, navigating, is everyone is allowed to feel their feelings, whatever those feelings are, because everyone's feelings are different.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Feelings are different and then they change. It depends. One year might be this or one moment might be that. And then it just ebbs and flows all the time. But just honoring that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you'd be surprised. I think that as time goes on too, you might resurrect, anger when there's another family event that pops up and there's something else, and then it resurrects anger about something else that you're like, well, wait a minute. It's like, I thought I was past that point. And you realize maybe you're not so past it, or maybe you stepped it down and it pops up years later.
Mhm.
But I think everyone's allowed to feel their feelings. And I always say too, it's giving other people grace. Our therapist told us that too. It's giving people that grace. So yeah, but yeah, I would not be who I was if it was not for Jord. My brother was, he had some really dark moments that unfortunately just took him under. But he had a hilarious, quick, dark sense of wit that I wish my crew knew. Now, I wish that the girls, both the one that lives in our house and the one that does not currently, live in our house, because we met her when she was already on her own. Um, I wish Hayden and Michaela would have able to have met my brother. I think they would have thought he was hilarious. I think he would have gotten a real kick out of them. I think they would have ended up comparing tattoos and going to get tattoos together. Um, I think he would have found their cousin hilarious, because she's a brilliant little girl too. I think, and I wish that, but you know, you
Yeah.
don't always get those options. So we're talking a lot now with our crew about rebuilding, and it's honoring the family members that aren't here anymore,
Oh, I like that.
but rebuilding within our own home and our own little family, and what that looks like. So, because we were team no babies, we were never going to have kiddos, and now, now mine's asleep in the next room over. So yeah.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing your personality, Jordan, your family, and all the things that you are rebuilding, your heart, your courage. It takes a lot of courage to come on to a podcast to talk about grief and loss. And especially
Yeah.
if you have substance abuse histories and worries and all of that, it takes a lot of courage just to formulate what I'm going to say to possible millions of people across the world. It could be, you
Right, right.
know, you just never know. But I appreciate you for coming on, for taking time out. Happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you. Cheers to us being 40, right? Cheers
Yeah,
to us doing this. Yes,
I'm
absolutely.
I'm actually 40. You go through a whole nother, for me, go through a whole
Yes.
nother butterfly effect. It's just like coming out of somewhere. I don't know where I was last year in my mind.
I feel, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said that. I feel that too. I know that has nothing to do with my brother and
Yeah.
you know, but I do think though that I've felt that so much lately. And you know, it was just yeah, I feel ready for the next step. And you know, I love that you're really embracing all of it. I know that we were talking right, I think before we hit record about the book, and I cannot wait to read your book. Um, because I think that you have so much to share with the world in written form as well as in podcast form. And I think that, you know, cheers to the next step and to continuing to help those along the way, because I really think collaboration is better than competition. We all do this together. We all have so much to share.
Yeah.
And I will say too, that one of the things that has been so helpful, especially at certain times in the year, certain times in the world for me, was the Facebook group that you had started, to be able to connect one-on-one with other surviving siblings. So just to give a, you know, if I'm allowed to pitch one of your things is, you know, for those of you guys that have not already joined, or if you would ever be interested in joining, Chris has this amazing Surviving Sibling podcast group. So, or not podcast group, but like a Facebook group,
Yeah.
that is just to connect one-on-one. And I
Yeah.
think that's just been so helpful.
Thank you so much for that plug.
Yeah, why not? Well,
I love it.
enjoy the rest of your day. And I can't wait to read your book.
Yes, thank you so much. And we will talk soon.
You got it.
All
You got
right.
it. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.